How is everybody tonight? I am the gaming nerd, and tonight we have a smorgasbord of all kinds of less boring stuff than what I've been doing lately. Um, I don't know where to start really. I wanted to touch on a little bit of code diving tonight, but I do know I've been getting lots of requests for the talk about the components again. I really find it surprising that nobody else has gone through it, but really, I'm not that surprised because there's some really boring stuff in there, but that's okay because I make this stuff interesting. So, looking for a decent platform. I did start with the components bonanza, but I don't want to. I'd like to be able to test it out in a submarine environment. You know what I mean? So let's my old faithful, the Typhon 2. Let's see what we can mess around with in here with some components. As always, if you join the chat, please say hello. I love hearing back from you guys. I love the feedback. I love finding out what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong. If you join sometime and I'm there's no audio, it's because I'm old and technology confuses me sometimes, or at least eludes me. So, where to start? Well, let's go. Where to begin? We'll call this the improved Typhon 2. Call it the Typhon 3. That's not presumptuous at all, is it? Typhon 3. Okay. Oh, it's a load button. See what I mean about old? All right. So I did want to start some work on the Fugu tonight, but a reproduction of the Fugu, my old design. But this is a good place to, because what we can do now is that we can spawn and we can test out some things in a real world application in a fake video game. So let's just set them all out so we don't forget which ones we have and which ones we've covered. There is the absolute, which I'm going to, I should make these little groups. I have these written down somewhere, didn't I? Okay. Where's our labels? We have several different groups here. I guess I can control drag that if I want to copy it next time, but okay. Hey, games that teach you about life are the best. Absolutely. Okay, Paro Diorama. Welcome to the stream. Like I said, I love hearing back from people, so please feel free to converse while I do this. We have the logic blocks. Right, this is going to be a rather small group, so we're just going to keep that one over here. We have parators. There's a simple math. And then there's the more advanced math, which are kind of mostly pointless. I mean, kudos to whoever was programming this that they wanted to put into factorial block, but there's so few applications of the factorial, the equation. They're not what's a function, but I just can't really see. He just said, "Oh, let's make a list of cool mathematical functions and make them work." Trigonometry. Oh, that one doesn't need a label. And what else? And the function. No, what they call them. There's one more group. I forget what I call them. Function blocks, I guess. That's an easy way to put them. I might be getting ahead of myself here, but I never mentioned the XOR component work with switches for turning the same lights on and off across the room. XOR is a finicky mistress. Always ended up restoring the toggle state. Yeah, you're talking about making like a lead follower system and like a three-way switch in a normal light switch, like in a house. Is that what you're trying to mimic? So you've switches on either side of the room, and then even if one's on, the other one will turn it off. Is that what you're trying to go for here? Because toggle state's probably the easier way to go. Yeah, like, don't get me wrong, I am a big fan of making things far more complicated than they need to be, but I think toggle states, like just putting buttons instead of switches, because switches can't be unswitched, and it would be confusing as hell if I walked into a room and saw a green light on the light switch and the lights were off. Although you can change those colors. Okay, hang on, where were we? I gotta digress. Okay, so we have put the absolute under advanced math. ACOS goes under trigonometry. Where did that one go? Okay. This one goes under simple math. This is a logic block. This is trigonometry. This is also trigonometry. Aha, this is... No, I didn't give that a new name. Okay. No offense, I do want to touch on that. Light controls, while minor, are a relevant thing. I personally like motion controls. I'm not sure if you saw my other live stream the other week. I have motion controls that turn lights on and off because if you use a timer, like most motion controllers, or sorry, most motion detectors are configured so that they only send a signal when there's motion. And so if you use that to turn the light on, and then you stand still while using like a fabricator or something, then the light turns off, and that's not fun. More function blocks here, more simple block here. If I miss one, guys, say something in chat because I am a little tired, but I will push on. Oh, put that one in the wrong spot. I'll make this all pretty like in a bit. And yeah, and there's other things related to blocks that aren't necessarily blocks. These are all advanced math, multipliers. It's a logic block there. And before we get really into the nitty gritty with the components, we need to talk about signals themselves, because there's several different types of signals, not including like power signals. So the power signals are weird because they're carried over, like the connections are similar to what a data connection's made, but when you connect something to a power, like a loop or a network, you add it to a list. And when every cycle of the game, that list is evaluated for power load and power availability and power consumption and so on and so forth. But there's no actual individual signals coming from one device to another. It's just added to a list. If it's oh, look at that, not enough room for these. Hang on. Yes, I'm about to very carefully realign these because I'm OCD when I'm tired. Then we have the XOR up here in the logic blocks. So when you connect something with wires in terms of data signals, when you connect something with wires, you have a placeholder in the code that every iteration of like every frame of the game, that specific connection is evaluated and checked to see what's going in and out of it. Whereas when you connect something with power, it's those power connections aren't individually assessed. It's added to a list, and that list is looped through, if that makes any sense. But the data connections are, if you break it down, if you go back and you look in the code, they're all strings, right? So if you send the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? It doesn't send the value 1234. It sends a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4, and then the block that receives it, the way that it interprets it is determined. So, for example, if you were to send a 1, a 2, and a 3, and a 4 into a simple math block, when it was, hang on here, this one, when it arrives at the signal in 1, it's going to be interpreted numerically. So if it's a letter A, nothing's going to happen because that's not a number. If it's a 0, that's going to be interpreted as a 0, and like the value of 0, although people argue whether or not 0 exists. But that's a whole other ball of cats. But by contrast, if you send a 1, 2, 3, 4 into an AND component, the signal 1 port, that's going to be received, and it will be. Oh, hang on, what's this? So, if Dr. Snakeo, you were here before. You were on the other night, were you not? You're going to make a joke. Please, don't let me stop you. I like a good joke. Yeah, so was I. I come and go. I wish I had more of a schedule for this thing. If there's more interest in live streams, then I will definitely start to do them more regularly, but I feel like they're kind of scattered right now. It's discouraging every now and again. I'll leave the stream running, or I'll realize after the fact that my audio was off the whole time, and that's horribly embarrassing, but I'm almost 40, so leave me alone. Wait, you know I'm Dr. Psycho. I do not. Are you real real doctor? Should be, because that'd be an awesome name. Where was I? Right, signals. So these ports have, like, all of these components have not imports and outputs. Some have only one input, some have multiple inputs, but the point is that the signals that go into them are always strings. The signals that come out of any block and go into any other block are always interpreted as, are always transmitted as letters. It's only when they arrive at the block that their interpretation is decided, if that makes any sense whatsoever. Yeah, see, I'm being a little OCD for this. I feel like I'm missing one. And sine, cos, tangent, arcsine, arctangent, cos. Might be that way. In-game, okay. So where would you guys, since I'm guessing everybody's a guy, but that's just horribly sexist, and so you gender-neutral internet beings, where would you like to start? Pick a square, any square. Parodiorama, you get to choose first, I suppose. Uh-oh. Did we lose him? Hope we didn't lose him. Comparators. Okay, excellent choice. All right, so comparators, like you could probably guess, make comparisons. The the equals component takes two signals and will only produce a true. So you'll hear me talk about true and false outputs. You can adjust the false or the true output through a set output port, but you can never change the false output aside from this properties panel, which does appear in game. So all of the comparators have this arrangement here. I think. Hang on, regex is slightly different, but those two and signal in. Okay, yeah. So these two, the equals and the greater than, have two signals in, a set output and a signal output. Now, we talked about signal types. I call them, there's logical, numerical, string, and what I call a universal, because you'll see in a second. The equal signs, these are all universal. It doesn't matter what the signal is. It could be numbers, could be letters, could be a 0 or a 1. If signal in 1 is the same as signal in 2, during the time frame here, then the true condition output is sent from this port. Otherwise, the false condition output is sent from this port. If the false condition output is blank, nothing is sent. If you have a third signal arriving in the set output port, it comes out of the signal output as in place of the true condition output. This is a theme that you'll see in other blocks. Like an AND block. I'm pretty sure you can do the same thing in an AND block. Yeah, they've got the set outputs here too, right? So these are always, I believe these signals are always interpreted numerically, but even if you send a letter A or a B, actually, you know what, let's test that out. Let's find out for sure if that's true. What's the point of me talking if I'm not being certain about what I'm talking about? Okay, we're going to put in here equals And we're going to put a couple text displays in here. Here, we're going to put memory blocks here and here. I had this set up the last time. I'm trying to remember how I did it because you want memory blocks here. How did I do this? I was proud of myself last time too because it was quite clever, in my opinion. Not trying to. Boy, it sounded arrogant when I said it out loud. Okay, we have a relay here. We're going to push a button, which means you push this one over here. Now, again, there's a difference between, just like there's a difference between network and data signal, sorry, power and data signals. There's buttons and switches, and Pato talked about this a little bit when he was talking about toggle state with buttons and, impulse with buttons and toggle states with switches. So if you were to plot this on a graph, like whenever you push this button, with a 0 being like a 0 output and 1, like just in simple two-state graph, when you push the button, it's a 1, but when you let go of the button, nothing happens. There's no 0 signal. It's just the ones. That's it. And there's nothing in between them. So they're great for instantaneous things. Like, for example, what we're going to do here, we're going to send a signal out from this memory block into... Hang on. It's supposed to go over here to set state. And we're going to put a memory block. You're going to see all kinds of neat little tricks in here because I got to do these. I won't have them explained yet, but if you have questions, I will answer them along the way. I want these memory blocks to update with the values in these memory blocks whenever I push this button. But to do that, I have to have this closed whenever the button's not being pushed. But the button does not produce a signal when it's not being pushed, so you can only send ones by itself. So even though I can send, I don't have to push a second time to toggle the state. I just want to push it once, get the update. If I could push it twice, that would make my life easier. But I don't like easy. Easy is boring. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to run this through two NOT components. I did that backwards, but you gotta be agile in these things, and I'm going to set these to have continuous outputs. So usually NOT components only send a signal when something changes. By checking that box, they're constantly sending a signal. Now, NOT components, I know I'm skipping ahead because you said you want to talk about comparators, but NOT components, they take a true input, turn it into a false output, and if there's a false output, they turn it into true input. A false is a false must be 0. Anything that's not a 0 is considered true in terms of logical inputs. Fun fact, 0 is considered a false, but several zeros, since you can't have the number 0000, you can only have 1, it interprets that as a string. It interprets it as 4 times the letter 0, if that makes any sense. Go in here. We go. This one comes into here. This one comes into here. And we will, change these to say true and false. I'll put these to a display here. You still with me? We got 2 concurrent viewers. That's better than I've done a lot of times. So they set text. So what's going to happen, and what I like to do with my text displays is that I put a default, like, here's a smiley face here. Being introduced to new concepts, so it's taking a bit. So no input. Aha, okay. Very, very good question. Is no input the same as 0? Depends on the block. Okay. In most cases, a no input just triggers nothing to happen. But in some cases, it is. Oh man, that is such a good question. I don't know how to explain it properly, but the point is that there are sometimes. So, for example, an addition block. Okay, if you have, oh no, I want signal out. Put that. Yeah, I did. Okay. Put a value in here, and we're gonna say value 0 in here. Okay. when you have an addition block, for example, if you put 1 into the first input port and you put nothing into the second input port, 1 plus blank isn't an equation, so nothing comes out. We'll see that in a sec. This is a good little thing to have here. So right now, the thing we are testing is this equals block. And I'm going to get a little bigger. Okay, so what's going to happen now? Oh, yes, that makes sense. Okay. But other things like a relay, I don't think, it's, there are cases where in case of setting the state of a door, 1 will close, 0 will open, and nothing will do nothing. Yes. Most ports in barotrauma are persistent, which means when, for example, I'm going to send a set state to this relay that's a 1 with the button. It's only going to last for a quick second, like it's only going to last literally 1/60th of a second, because that's how long these CPU frames are. That one exists for a 1 frame and then it disappears, but the state of this relay will persist without something else to change it. So until it receives something other than a 1, it will remain on. So let's see if I did this right. Hang on, I'm gonna turn on some quick lock to make sure the submarine doesn't move, line of sight to get rid of the fog of war, lights to turn off the lighting system, and power to instantly power up the reactor. And I'll turn off the crew, so they're not wandering around doing shit. All right. I really should have that on a quick something. I don't know. Okay, so now, whenever I push this button, whatever is in these memory blocks will be transferred over to these memory blocks, which will then be compared by the equals comparator. So if I make this a 1, I go over here. It's true. Yay, 1 equals 1. Imagine that. Right? If I say A equals 1, we push the button. It's false. I go down here, and I open up this one, put an A in here, push that. That is also true. If I put a 0 in here, push the button, false once more. And if I put a blank in here, considered false. Now, the question is, what happens when I put 2 blanks in? Now, this is gonna be a test question, because for who's paying attention, why does this say true? Hang on, did it say true a second ago? It did too, didn't it? All right. So that's the equals block. Basically, if signal in 1 and signal in 2 are the same, false. True. So that's the equals component. Where are we? Oh, there they are. Okay, so let's I'm just gonna put these off to the side once I've taken care of them. Put that over here. Okay, so the greater than component is similar to the equals component, that it takes 2 signals and compares them. But in this case, I'm not sure. We'll have to test to see what it does with character inputs. But if one signal is numerically greater than the other, then if the input signal on channel 1 is bigger than the input signal on channel 2, then this one outputs a true response, true condition output. If the numerical value of whatever's input to channel 2 is bigger, then this becomes false. That's it. Is 1 greater than 2? And once again, we have this set output port here that replaces the true condition output should you choose to have some sort of dynamic output signal. You guys, is my volume okay? You know what? I'm tempted to put a little music in the background, but the last time I did that, I got DCMA'd, which is a big piss off, but I feel like it could be. This is riveting. I can imagine making a locked door with a passcode key on it. Oh, audio is perfect. Why, thank you. I tried. I spent a lot of time tuning the noise gate on this because I hate hearing my own lips when I tried again. So let's see what the greater than's like. Okay, I'm gonna do that again. Lowest lock, lights, power, stable, crew, AI. There we go. Okay. So now 1 is greater than 0, and we have a 1. Now, haha. Fun fact, most true-false output components in Barotrauma have, by default, no false output. So if you have... Somebody's saying you're working with the XOR component, did you check what the false condition output was? Because I'll bet you there was nothing. So we go here, we say 1 is 1. No, not with a bunch of it, it's just 1. False. Exactly. So 1 is not greater than 1. 0. Try 0. Nope, there's those A's again. True. Now, let's try something else. Is 1 greater than the letter A? True. What, is that really true? What about, space? Actually, no, let's try here. Let's put a space on the 1. No signal. There we go. False. Blank is not greater than A. But is B greater than A? I wonder. Nope, false. So what it's doing, it's interpreting the character values not as any ASCII value, but they're just saying is letter greater than letter. Well, letter has no number. Yeah, algebra. No, there's no algebra here. It's just saying this is not a number and this is not a number, therefore they are both not numbers and therefore equal, and therefore one is not greater than the other, and this is false. Does that make sense? If you guys feel like I'm leaving stuff out or haven't answered questions, please. Yeah. Okay. If you think I've missed something, please, I won't know until later if you don't say anything. But yeah, don't be. You guys seem to be nice and chatty tonight, which is great. Oh, Regex. Regex is a mystical beast. One of my favorites, because it is so damn functional, it's not even funny. But it is not an easy thing to explain. And I'm doing a video about damage mechanics, and the damage mechanics video is going to lead into types of damage and weaknesses and resistances of the creatures. And then that's going to lead into turrets and ammunition video, which was the whole point because of the new turrets that came out with Hoist of Sails update. Yeah, I would obviously. You say that, but I'm warning you, it's really, really goddamn dry. In fact, the first video, because I spend so much time digging through the code, looking for the values that I do, I want you guys to be able to follow along, not just watch the video, but to actually do what I do as I do it, so that if you want, you guys can try to do the code diving by yourselves in the future, or look for things and understand them a little bit better. And so the first 8 minutes of the first video is spent installing Visual Studio Code, which is a very beginner-friendly coding platform, and teaching you how to explore XML files. And XML is very boring hypertext markup language, but there are tools that make it much more easy to understand. And I go through all these because it's not something that anybody's done before. Hang on, we got 3 concurrent viewers. We got Dr. Snake, we got Pero, and somebody who hasn't spoken up yet. I don't think. Hang on. Do you guys want to see a little bit of that as a preview? Or do you want me to continue with the components? Because there's a quote from that video that I wanted to use here. Looking at an XML file is overwhelming at first because it's just a bunch of angle brackets and slashes and things that might not make sense at first. Preview of the XML, yes. Not in depth, like show of the whole video. I don't want to steal my own thunder. But the quote from the movie is the quote from the XML section is just because it looks. Hang on, I gotta find it because I want to get this right. Hang on, I'm gonna switch this to my desktop, which isn't gonna be easy. Hang on. Give me 1 second, guys. Yeah, preview. Hey, JCow. All right. I need to create a new scene here. Stop. Look, took a long time, but I got the hang of it. I was working on my mod before you joined the stream. Okay, nice. I want to hear more about that. Video. Where's my display capture video? Jack input screen capture. There we go. Okay, and screen 0. Okay. Hopefully that's back up. So we're gonna go over here and we're gonna switch to resolve. And I'm gonna turn this back into dual screen. Nope, dual screen off. Okay. E-pool. Okay, here we go. This is the XML. Oh, this is the intro, isn't it? No. Oh, this isn't even right. Video. Okay. Video 10 mod. There we go. Yeah, I'm very, very, very cluttered when it comes to this stuff. Where is it? Hang on, I mute this. Getting into MXMLs. Yeah, just because it appears difficult to read doesn't mean that it's difficult to understand. That is the key to this whole XML thing. But like I break it right down into like how XMLs are laid out. Elements, you got attributes, you got tags, you got nested characters. But then we can get into things like damage modifiers. So if you look at your Visual Studio Code and you start going into, like, for example, the Mud Raptors file here, right? This is the code that drives the Mud Raptor. Now, this whole blue and white and green business here, that's what the XML file looks like raw. But if you have the right plugins, like for, say, this one, it turns it into a tree that's much more easy to understand. And so, for example, the Mud Raptor has, and if you scroll down through here, there's health and there's damage emitters and sounds that it makes and inventories. This one's really cool because there's 3 inventories. This I don't talk about in the video, so I can just talk about this without giving giving any spoilers. So you'll notice there's 3 inventory items here, okay? They have a commonness value, 1, 1, and 15, okay? I don't know how you guys are with your math and algebra, but there's something called a weighted average. The probability, like, it can't spawn with 3 inventories, it spawns with 1 of these 3. If you total these up, 15, 1, and 1 is 17. 15 out of 17 times, it will spawn with this one here. And 1 out of 17 times it'll spawn with this one, 1 out of 17 times it'll spawn with this one. You'll notice now that these inventory elements have children item elements. In this case, it's hydroxyapatite. In this case, it's a hydroxyapatite in a mud raptor shell. And this one is hydroxyapatite in a small mud raptor egg. So basically, any mud raptor that you kill is guaranteed going to drop a hydroxyapatite. Don't ask me why they're chewing on mineral rocks, but anyways. Then you have a 1 in 17 chance of getting either a mud raptor egg or a mud raptor shell out of it. So yeah, that's just exploring this code. If you go into health and you go down here, you see these things called limbs, right? And it's got a few limbs. In this case, limbs, left leg, right leg. So these ones, you'll notice they have no further properties. It just says name, torso, head, leg, right leg. Okay. If we go back out to the folder, okay, we see this ragdoll folder, and we open up the ragdoll. Right? Do the same thing. We go into this XML tree, okay? Now we have much more detailed information about those limbs. Let's start with the head. This is all sorts of things, like, for example, the width and the radius. Is there a dimension to commonness or like drops per minute? No, it's just a weighted average. That's it. So if we go into the content here, hang on, we're going to say save this. We'll come back to it later. Yes, here we go to this character editor. Sorry, I moved quick, but you guys can rewind this in the future if you want. Let's go down here to MudRaptor, okay? Parameters and sprite sheet. So these are all the individual pieces of a MudRaptor, right? You go into here, right? This, the head is in here. Right now, the armor's in the way. We can hide it. Oh, this one. Hide the head armor. I don't know what that one is. What? What's this other one? Is that the water attack thing? Hide. There we go. So turn the head back on. So underneath that giant helmet thing this is the face of your MudRaptor. Anybody who's faced off with one of these things knows what they're terrifying this face looks like, but that means his head armor's off and he's very vulnerable. If you look, so we're looking at the head one, right? See this? Where did they go? This one here, head. There's a radius here and a width here. Okay, the 80 and the 30. We turn on colliders, right? These. I don't know why these don't disappear. You'll see a green circle here and a green circle here. That's width. Oh, no, that's radius 30, and the distance between them is the 80, right? And the tangent of those circles is this box. Okay, and that is the box that interacts with anything. If there's a bullet, the bullet has to pass through that box to trigger collision with the head limb. Where was I going with this? Okay, so yeah, that's where this 80 and the 30 come from. Right, now if you scroll down here, okay, we have this thing, it's called damage modifiers. Now, this is a 1.5 multiplier for damage and bleeding. Now, I get into it in the video, but these are affliction types, so these are groups. There's bleeding and non-stop bleeding are two different types of bleeding, and then damage is 7. There's 7 different categories of damage. So any one of those 7 or those 2 types of bleeding are multiplied by 1.5 if they are applied to this head. If you go down here to one below it, you've got the head armor. This is the helmet that goes on the MudRaptor, right? Notice width 120, radius is 30, so slightly larger hitbox than the other one, right? You down here at its damage modifiers, it is a 90% reduction in damage. For which one is this? Damage types. Oh, damage. This is internal damage. Yeah. What do you mean this is cool? This is boring, but I love going through it, but it's really cool to see this stuff, right? All this damage stuff, I'm going to leave it because it's in the code. I'll show you one that you guys will really probably appreciate because not everybody understands where these bad guys come from and why they show up when they do. So we're going to go in down here. Random events campaign. So if you're playing a campaign game, this code's going to come into play. All right? Now, this one, the XML file is not that bad to go through. Okay? So we're going to scroll to the top. Do you guys know the biomes? There's 5 biomes. There's the cold caverns, and then there's a trophic plateau, the European, the great something. Anyways, believe it or not, I've spent more time in this bloody coding and video editing than I have anything else. I haven't played this game for real in a long time. Anyways, campaign progression set should be biome specific and not used in multiplayer single mission game mode. Hydrothermal waste or something. Yes, exactly. So, I have a graphic of it somewhere. Give me 1 second, see if I can find it. Just find something online. Barotrauma. Wiki biomes. Guys, the wiki, by the way, for the Barotrauma is so ridiculously useful, it's not even funny. Okay, here we go. This... Open link in new tab. Okay, so this is basically how the levels are laid out. Yes, exactly. The cold caverns is 1,000 to 2,000. PC, get 100 damage reduction or 75. I don't understand the question. Like, non-player characters and PCs? Question regarding damage in specific. How does damage reduction work? Let's see, PC. Okay, it's 50% and where's that? Okay. Okay. You're getting into a couple things here, and I will answer that question because you came to the stream and you asked a question. I will answer that one directly. Okay. So here's how damage works. So the first thing is you have a bullet sprite. And a sprite is just a temporary existing entity in the game. It has a beginning and an end of its life. In this case, we're going to be talking about weapons. Let's just say the one that I use. Okay, the one that I use in my video, and I can probably show you, is the a coil gun bolt versus mud raptor helmet. So where is the? Hang on. Coil ammo box, coil gun bolt. Hang on. If I click it in here, it should bring me to it in the code. Um, Coil gun, double coil gun loader. There's a coil gun bolt, which means that one is. I don't know what that is. Okay. So here's our coil gun bolt, right? See this line here, the sprite line? This is where it gets the graphic stuff. The body stuff is how it determines. I think this is where the collider. No, this isn't. Yes, this is where the collider comes from. So the collider is 170 pixels long and 10 pixels wide. Density, it does have ballistic motion, and there is such a thing as a coefficient of like drag in this game. The physics, when you get into the code in this game, the physics is nuts. Like they take this shit really seriously, and it's very like I'll show you a clip out of the video. Where is it here? The resolve at the very very end. I talk about explosions. Hang on here. Where is my? I keep closing them. Explosions. Here we go. Now, when you look at this, okay, so when an explosion happens, okay, the game draws lines out from the point of the explosion, looking for colliders that get hit. Okay, in this case, hang on, I turn this off. All right, so this guy is getting hit directly from this blast. So once it identifies something that gets hit, it draws a much finer. What, you say nuts, but I modded item with really high throwing power, and it phased through my submarine. I believe it. So basically, it's drawing all these lines to determine how much of the explosion is being blocked or not. Right. In this case, the guy on the left is kind of fucked. The guy on the right has a wall partially blocking the explosion. Right. So that fraction of the explosion is dropped. And what happens is the game takes all of those lines that are intersecting and it calculates a resultant vector. Now, a vector for you guys is both a speed and a direction. So you'll notice the guy on the left took more of the explosion. He's going to go off to the left, and the woman on the right took less of the explosion. She's also going to go off to the right. But watch carefully when we do it again in slow motion. Okay, watch the feet. You saw those rays are intersected with the feet, right? The feet are what's getting knocked back by the explosion, and the body just moving with it because it's attached to the feet. Like, that's what I'd call dedication to physics, man. Like, this is... Okay. Yeah. Pretty cool, huh? Okay. We talked about armor penetration. Okay. Okay, so we talked about damage modifiers. What's part 3? Part 3 is armored limbs. Okay, we talked about armor. Okay. Right. So the mud raptor has the head underneath and has the head armor above it. The only way, like, the head armor blocks 90% of internal type damages, which is lacerations, deep tissue injury, gunshot wounds. Oh shit, there's 7 of them. Hang on. Stun, bite wounds. That's 5. Internal damage, which is not only a category of damage but a type of damage, and the whole thing is referenced by the word damage in the code. So that is insanely confusing. That's 6. I'm forgetting one. Deep tissue injury, laceration, gunshot wounds, stun, bite wounds, hang on. I've got it here in part 2. Damage modifiers. There it is. Okay, that's blunt force trauma, of course. So yeah, internal damage, blunt force trauma, gunshot wounds, bite wounds, stun, lacerations, and deep tissue injuries. All of these are blocked 90% by the Mud Raptor helmet, or head armor, or whatever you want to call it. And bleeding damage is suppressed 100%. And What's the other one? It's, oh, burns. Burns are reduced by 75%. So, the only way to get past the armor is to break it off in a process that the code refers to as limb severance. And for those of you who've seen American Psycho, it's what I thought of. So that's how I opened the limb severance. So if you go into the code here, right, and we go into the Mud Raptors, hang on, Bear Trauma Mud Raptor here. Oh no, we went to Ragdoll. Okay. We go here to the head armor, which is the third limb here. Okay, you still with me? There is a damage modifier here. Oh, hang on, no, where's min severance damage right there. Okay, so to get past the armor and shoot at the head, you have to break the armor off. It's literally, and all the armor is handled with the same code in mathematics as a limb, like an arm or a leg. The limb armor is just another limb that's attached to the another type of limb attached to the limb itself. I know that sounds horribly complicated, but the head armor is a limb that's attached to the head. And so they didn't have to come up with two different types of code about breaking the limbs off the body and breaking the armor off the limbs. They just treat the armor. Yes, all of this makes perfect sense with respect to the game. Thank you. So min severance damage is the minimum amount of damage required to trigger a severance check after damage modifiers are applied. So let's go back to that video because I've got the whole thing laid out. Okay, here we go. The Mud Raptor's head armor has a min severance damage of 0.8. Okay, if you take a coil gun bolt, we're going to talk about this in video 3. But turrets are for video 3. But we'll talk about a coil gun bolt. If you go into the coil gun bolt's code, it has a limb severance probability of 0.25. Okay, now that means that if it does trigger a minimum severance check, it has a 25% chance of succeeding in severing the head armor from the head. But it has to surpass the trigger threshold of 0.8 in order to do so. And this is after all the damage modifiers. So if we go back to the code and we look up the coil gun bolt here, we see that there is 15 laceration, 1 bleeding, and 0.025 stun. Okay? If we go back and we look at the Mud Raptor, okay, we know, where's that? The head armor has, where am I going here? Third limb down, this one. Head armor has damage modifier of 90%. So laceration falls under internal damage. So that means that 15 damage is reduced to 1.5. Which is good because the bleeding damage is suppressed by 100% and it does nothing. So 1.5 is greater than 0.8, which means that it triggers a severance check. Now, this is where it starts to get fun because for the life of me, the math wasn't working out. I couldn't figure out why it seemed harder, more difficult to sever some limbs than their probability what would suggested that they would. And then I realized that there's joints are where the severance happened. So if we look at the head is limb 0, if I remember correctly. Hang on. Head armor, yeah. So head armor is ID 2, and head is ID 0. Okay, we go past all these limbs and we get down to the joints. Okay. Toes, appendages, tails, claws, armor, limb 2, right? If you go down here and keep scrolling to the right, there is severance probability modifier. Okay. In this case, it's 1-to-1. It's not going to change anything. But if you try to sever, hang on, I don't know what I just did. Some of them, where's that? Some of them probability modifier of 2. So if you've got a bullet that has a 10% chance of severance, it's going to double it and give you 20% chance of severance, right? Some of them have a severance probability modifier of 0, which means it's impossible to sever that limb until the creature's dead. After that, you can just wail on it and it'll break it into pieces. But the point is, is you have the damage. It all happens when the hitbox of the bullet goes into the hitbox of the uh, sprite's limb, right? In this case, the head armor. When those two boxes overlap, it triggers on hit effects. The on hit effects are the 15 laceration, the 1 bleeding, and the 0.025 stun. Those on hit effects are then applied against what is called damage mitigation, which is these oh crap, what are they called? The damage modifiers up here. Okay, so we'll look at the head armor here. Okay, if we open this up again, oh, it's a jaw. Hang on, 3. So yeah, down here. Okay, so then the damage modifiers, it's calculated how much damage they reduce, but before that damage reduction is applied, if it's an armored limb, so if you go in and you look into these damage modifiers, the deformable sprite, okay? No, actually, I'm right. It is the damage modifiers. See where it says deflect projectiles? If you go into the code on the GitHub, Trauma client, client source, actually, no, hang on, let's say penetration. Because this is going to be all about attack. Okay, here we go. Find penetration. Okay, this is for armor penetration. The percentage of damage mitigation. It makes me have so much respect for people who study game design. Yeah, no kidding. Percentage of damage mitigation ignored when hitting armored body parts, deflecting limbs. Yeah, this is straight out of my video because this is important. Percentage of damage mitigation ignored when hitting armored body parts, specifically deflecting limbs. All right, so we go back here. Okay, it says deflecting projectiles equals true. So this limb, the head armor here, qualifies for armor penetration reduction. So, yet what? That coil gun bolt. What did it do for our pen? Hang on. Here, penetration 0.1. Okay, not huge. So it does the 15 damage comes in, and it gets reduced by 90%. But because it's hitting an armored limb, the 10% of armor penetration from the coil gun bolt's properties reduce that 13.5% by its own 10%. So 13.5 minus 1.35. I'm not going to do that math in my head, but 13.5 minus 0.35. And then that whole thing is... all this new info means I'm potentially going to have to do so much work. Not really. I find that if you understand... So 2.85, a lot of sharing and teaching. Oh, this is cool. Wow, I'm glad you think so. So what this means is that if you shoot a coil gun bolt at the head of a mud raptor, you're likely going to be doing 2.85 laceration damage, right, from your 15. Who asked about that? That was question. Yeah, power demo. Okay, so this is it. Does that answer your question? Does this make that's pretty much it? Collider triggers on hit effects. On hit effects trigger damage modification. Damage modifiers can trigger armor penetration reduction, and then from there, it's applied to the limb. Then there's a severance check. Now, fun fact. So bleeding is a type of damage that persists over time. Right, like a laceration is just hits you once and you can heal it and it goes away, but bleeding causes cumulative effects over time. If you have, this is interesting, I haven't gone into it too in depth because I don't fully understand the mechanic yet. If you have an arm that you're bleeding from because you've been shot in the arm and it's been taking bleeding damage, right? There's blood loss damage from you that applies to generally the whole body, but the limb itself gets the bleeding damage. If you sever that limb, the limb severance has its own bleeding effects, but the initial bleeding damage is lost because that limb is no longer attached to the body. If you burn part of the body, that burn damage is lost if that limb is cut off. So that's kind of cool, kind of terrifying, because that means that, like, Oh, and here's another thing that you guys might have noticed. As we're in coil gun, we go back to the ragdoll. I love this head armor because I've used it brutally over and over and over again for examples. Okay, you see this one, armor sector 0 to 360. If we go into the character modifier, right, and we go into ragdoll, and we talk about damage modifiers, right? Look at this, we got circles, right? Let's look at the a different one. Let's look at a bone thresher, right? Look at these, okay? See those half circles? That means that the damage modifiers from those limbs only apply in those arc sectors. You shoot them in the belly, you're going to get a different effect, right? So now we know that the damage modifiers are limb specific. They can apply to one or more types of damage. We know that they have their own damage multipliers and that they may or may not apply to shots in all different directions. Like, there's a lot to damage mechanics, which is why when I started making one video about it, I realized that unless I want to make like a couple-hour long video, I'm gonna have to split this up. And so the first video is dedicated to understanding the mechanics of damage, and the second one will be because I can't talk about the efficacy and the usefulness of the various turrets without talking about them in the context of the things you'll be shooting at. But I can't talk about the things you'll be shooting at because the different types of damage affect they change apparently. Like hang on, where's my Moloch? I got a little video here that's in here. I think it's part of damage modifiers. Hang on. Oh no, I want damage modifiers. Where'd that go? Part 2. Moloch versus chain guns. Here. Okay. So basically, Molochs are virtually bulletproof, right? On the shell. Right? The 90% laceration reduction, right? So you go up against even the 3 chain guns, you're not doing any damage to the Moloch, right? But you come at this thing with pulse lasers, it's gonna have a pretty bad day. Like, it just instantly starts shredding through this thing. Those are yes, there's 3 of them in that clip, but it only just speeds up the effect. Is it possible to make a 0-degree arc limb? Make it unharmable? Why wouldn't you just give it a damage modifier of 0? Then it multiplies any incoming damage by 0. There's no minimum severance check of inf. Like, go. I understand the difficulty in explaining. It's all interconnected. You really aim to understand. Yes, here's my goal. I used to teach engineering, not at like a super high level. I only taught first year students. But the point is, I don't feel like there's this concept of knowledge transfer, right? I could be talking and you're going to be listening, but if you don't get it, then there's no knowledge transfer, and it's kind of pointless. And so my metric for successful knowledge transfer is if you could go and explain this to somebody else, right? And now obviously you'd have to start with the whole concept of barotrauma, but like, my dad is 79 this year, and he's been listening to me make these videos to the point that he's confident that he could pick up this game and play it despite being unable to type. But he could pick up this game and play it because he's heard what I've said so many times and explained in so many different ways. Yeah, I do take a long time for my videos, but I don't want to get anything wrong. It really... There's... One of my students gave me a little plaque that I keep on my desk. It says, "Qui docet decet." It's a Latin parable, or Latin idiom. It means, he who teaches learns. So I learn the whole time that I'm teaching you guys this stuff. Every time I do it, I learn a little bit more about the game and about how to teach this stuff. Anyways, I digress. Wow, we're way off topic here. We were supposed to be talking about components, and you guys distracted me. Typhon 3.1. So yeah, that was damage reduction or damage mitigation. There's min severance damage and all that sort of stuff. It's cool, nice to learn about the teacher. Oh, thank you. Okay, regex. Maybe that's why I was digressing, because I knew what I was getting myself into. All right, we're going to switch over here to a website called Regex 101, and I recommend you bookmark this because it is, if you do anything with the regex, it's going to be immensely, immensely useful. Okay. So regex means regular expression, and it's one of the oldest forms of search that has persisted in code. And it's like they say crocodiles haven't really evolved in 30 million years because they haven't needed to. They're just perfect the way they are. My initial question was actually regarding humans and how the inner clothing can have damage reduction and the armor suit on top of its own reduction values. Well, hopefully that makes a little more sense now. Inner clothing is probably considered a limb as well. I don't know if I think the clothing can't be separated. Didn't say much earlier because what I was getting was so good. Well, I'm flattered, but I don't want to leave your question unanswered. So I'm going to keep going about regex, but please, I can go back and forth in case you haven't noticed. It might be hard to follow as a viewer, but for me, I can come back full circle. So regex is like the crocodile of the programming world. It's like this search mechanism that armor vest is a modular limb, probably. The way that we've seen armor work, it'll have. I don't see why it wouldn't be treated like any other armored limb. Yeah, that would make more sense. Okay. So, what? 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 This means you can make armor that is only one side. Yes, absolutely. That's what the armor sector thing would do. Isn't there? Yeah, there's like helmet. There's a bunch of stuff. Hang on. Paratrauma items. This is incredible. You are easily amused, my friend. I like it. It makes me feel even better. Careful, my ego has to fit through that door. Materials? No, it's crafting stuff. Tools? No, it'll be job stuff, job gear. Okay. Let's look at the security. Riot gear. Okay, security officer gear, uniform. Sprite, uniform. Limb, inherit source, inherit origin. Hang on. Body armor. Here we go. Ballistic fiber, inventory, sprite, wearable. There we go. Damage modifier. Armor sector 0 to 360. Yeah, this is a wearable item with a damage modifier built in. So this should answer your question right there. Now this one's set to 0 to 360, but if you want to make it less than that, then go right ahead. Stay nerdy is right. Thanks for stopping by, Dr. Snake Oil. Always fun to see you. Suddenly makes so much sense. Yes, exactly. I'm glad they're not doing it in Radians. There are other components that work in Radians, and I'm not a huge fan. Peace out. Peace. Love it. Peace is great. All right. Now, Paro, have we successfully answered your question? Putting you on the spot, bud. Uh-oh. Here's something at the door. Hang on, I believe it's a gaming cat. Give me a sec. He has announced his entrance, ladies and gentlemen. I've been doing tricks with this guy, and he's become like infinitely more interactive since we started. Okay, so we have answered the question about damage modifiers and armor and such. So we're going to go back to components, but that means you have to come back here to regex 101. Okay, so regular expression. You give it a string. Like let's just say I am the very model modern Major General. Okay. And enter to put a new line at the end. See, now here's the thing. See that little blip there at the end? That's actually character. You don't see it in most word processors, but it's a character called a line return, or new line character and character return. Usually there's two. Anyways, so this is our input string. If we were to look at the regex, this is the equivalent of this line here, the signal in. Okay. If we put what's this? Okay. The right. It's just gonna say, yep, there's a the in there, and it just comes back true. If you say, okay, so this is where it gets weird, because you don't have to search for the. You can say the, and then a star is anything, any character. Sorry, a dot is any character at all. Right, so space. So the regex differentiates between characters and white space. Hang on. Sorry, doors need to be open and closed. So there's characters, there's non characters. So there's, I think, there's quantifiers too, right? So you can say, if I'm looking for, hang on, palindromes. Was it a car or a cat I saw? Fun fact, this one is the same for forwards and backwards. So you could say, if you want a 3-letter word, so characters are, if you go down here, hang on, any single character is a dot. Okay, so if you've seen star dot star, you might have seen that in command line stuff. That means any letter and then a dot and then any other letter, right? So it means you can take any file name with any extension. If we say dots, any dot that is 3 times, up to 3 times, this will search for only, oh, hang on, should be 3 letters. No, it's not working. Anyways, the point I'm making is that this regex 101 website, you can put any test string in, and you can put any regular expression in, and it'll test it here. So if we say cat, right, it finds a cat. If you put, say you feed in a reactor temperature of 4,790, right? If you can make one to say, if you want to say if this is at 5,000 or less than, or sorry, 4,999 is the easier way to do it. You'd say 0 to 4, no, 1 to 4. Is that how I do it? There, question mark dot question mark dot question mark $. No. 1 to 4. Question mark dot question mark dot question mark dot. There we go. Okay. This is a tricky one to explain. So the square brackets allow you to define a range of values. So right now, if we wanted to detect any time the reactor is at 5,000 degrees or higher, we have to look for the easier way, because this is when I want to make the 2-component controller. So anything that's, it was tricky to come up with a way to test for a reactor value that's less than 5,000 degrees without using a third component, because if I use a greater than, I have to have something to compare it to, like a memory block, right? So this is where the regex comes in. This is the least efficient way to do a comparison I can think of, but the point is, you can make big, ugly comparisons here. Let's see if I have one in hang on. Let's see. Here we go. Reactor testing environment. I've got a good one in here that you guys can see. Go in here, the controller. So the controller selection module here is just, it goes through these different various controllers. If it's a 1 over here, see this target signal. So all the channels 100 is the one that determines which reactor controller is being used, right? So if these are all on channel 100, and these signal blocks are looking for matching numbers. So if it's a 1 here, you can see this signal block is looking for a 1, then this one's active. If it's a 2, it's this one active. If it's a 3, then it's 4. But when I'm over here and I look at this controller selection, I don't want to remember which ones are 1 or 2 and 3 and 4. I want to have names to it. So you need a memory block, a concatenation block, and a regex block. I need another one. The memory is where the number's coming from. All right, so check this out. So we've got this one here. Let's say it's a 7. Okay, it's getting concatenated with the string coming from this block. I'll explain concatenators in a bit. Basically, it glues two sentences together. And then it feeds the combined signal from these two memory blocks into the regex, which applies this nasty huge expression, which I'm going to currently copy into here. Right, you see that mess up there, okay? And I'm going to take the memory block in here. Oh, memory block here. I'm going to copy this one, which is even longer and messier. Oh, here. All right. So, if I can explain this properly, I think I will have properly explained regex. So let's move into something more easy to split up and take apart here. Okay. Okay, so this is our search expression for regex. I want something monospaced. Hang on. Inconsolata. There you go. That's a good one. Medium. Break it a couple times here. Okay, so regex is easiest to understand if you break it up by brackets, right? So we've got quiet cat. We've got this one, this set of brackets here, right? What we're gonna do? Say copy. Hang on. I know I'm probably going a little over the top here, but regex is one that's avoided a lot, and I don't want to avoid it. I want to hit this thing sucker's head on. So, got this one here, right? We've got this one here. Hang on, I can close that door again. The cat's making its entrance, and I might have to glue him to the sofa if he won't leave me alone. There's that second one. The fourth one, apparently. All right. Well, what's this? Lol, what? What you laughing at, buddy? This is not... Oh, gluing the cat to the sofa? That's probably what you're laughing at. Okay, and last but not least, this mess. Okay. So you can see that there's bold, and then this one here, which we're going to tint a little bit. Lighter. And then there's an underscore here, which we're also going to tint lighter. Oops, not the highlight. I want this one. Oh. And this one. Okay, so these are the, hang on, what is this? This is 17.5. I want this to be 17.5. So there's this thing in a bracket, there's this thing in a bracket, there's this one, and then there's the other one here, which is also in a bracket, right? And they are separated by, this thing just means that you always want to start the search from the beginning of the line. This is a special character. This is not a special character, it's just an underscore. This is a multiplier, so it's looking, a star means 0 or more. So any occurrences of this thing satisfies the star. And then there's a semicolon, which is a text. So, okay. Now, round brackets. Round brackets are grouping characters. So you use round brackets to contain conditions, and you can separate them from each other. So In this case, like this is one set, this is another set, this is another set, and this is a third set. Now, note the question mark and the symbol at the beginning. Okay, when you have a question mark with this colon beside it, that is a what's called an ungrouped. No, it's an unsaved, or what's the name for it? Regex calls it something. Non-capturing group. That's what it's called. Right. So this one here and this one here, it looks for the conditions, but it doesn't do anything. This one, on the other hand, when it has the input, see the way it's an angle brackets input, it looks for something that matches these conditions, and if it's found, it's saved under the name input. Okay. Now, square brackets are group constructs. So if you want to say look for, hang on, I'm going to duplicate this tab here and come back, and we'll say the quick fox jumped over the lazy dog. Right, if we want to say look for F's, G's, or Q's, right, you put them in a square bracket, and then any occurrence of those letters is satisfied by the 1. So this one block is satisfied by any one of these 3. If you put in here a caret, anything that's not one of these 3 will satisfy this condition. And then if you put, oh, hang on, not that one. You want to put a plus? Yeah, satisfied star is how many? No, multiples at the same time. Okay. But the point is the square brackets are grouping constructs. So this says anything that is not a semicolon or a underscore satisfies this block, and we're looking for as many as we can find. And then there's a semicolon. Or sorry, there's an underscore. And then this non-grouping modifier says, okay, we're looking for something that's not underscores, as many as we can, and then another underscore. That one follows an underscore. I know this is starting to get confusing, but stick with me here, okay? Then, after it finds as many of those as it can, it's looking for this input again. Okay? You're going to see why here in a second. And if it finds this input again, it's going to create another group called output, which was what comes after, right? So hang on, check this out. If we go back to this one, okay, notice I have 0, native. So the native autocontroller is number 0. 1 semicolon is the 2-component V1. Notice the separation of these groups with the underscores, right? 0 native. 1. See the way that these are all separated by underscores? Right? 3 comp V2. Number 4 is 5 comp V1. Number 5 is 5 comp V2. Number 6 is 7 component. And number 7 is a full PID. All right? What it's doing is it's looking for anything that's not a semicolon or an underscore at the beginning. So that goes over here. If I say 7 is what it was, right? So here is what the input is. It's saying, okay, the input is the first thing, everything that leads up to the first underscore or semicolon. If we look at that here, that's the 7. Once you go past the 7, you hit an underscore. All right, you come back over here and say, okay, have as many of those characters as we can until we hit an underscore. Then we're going to start looking for these underscore pairs until we find one that starts with the input that we just tested, right? So we're looking for these scores until we find one. Look at this. There's that 7 that's part of our input, right? After it finds the input, it looks for the same input and up to the semicolon, and then the output is whatever comes after that semicolon. So in our case, that's the word full PID, right? And it does output until it hits an underscore. So there you go. The answer, you put a 7 in here and tack it onto the string, you get the full PID is what comes out. And that's the string that I would look at on the display to, that's how the display converts the number of the currently selected reactor controller and spits out the name of it. And that's all I'm going to say about regex. Whew. Time hyphen 3.1. Hopefully that makes things a little clearer. Still there, Pero? I had two concurrent viewers. I'm guessing you've been the long hauler here so far. That's really cool. It's completely new to me. That's awesome. You learn something new every day. My grandmother used to say, the day you stop learning is the day you start dying. Yes, regex is definitely something you need to get experience with in order to use it to its fullest extent. However, it doesn't mean you can't leverage other people's experience. If you come don't be afraid to search the internet for things like how do I blankety blank with a regular expression, because life is the eternal teacher. Yeah, no kidding. Basically, whatever your question is, whatever your problem is, unless you're like a PhD student that's pushing the limits of their field, odds are somebody else has asked that question too. Just say it. All right, last comparator is the signal check block. This one is very similar to the equals block. However, so there's a single in and there's a set target signal. So in that respect, it's very much like the equals block. The difference is you can set the target signal and, pardon me, you can set the target signal and the true condition output via external inputs. That's something that's not yes, that's the same as true condition tester, but it's easily configured in either the properties panel or via wiring components. We're not unique thinkers. We're not unique thinkers. Why not? Unique thinkers, we need more of them. I'll tell you what, guys, it's like 1:38 a.m. here. We just finished the comparators. We did a whole bunch on damage modifiers. I'm going to... We'll get out of wiring mode here, and I think we'll call it a night here. And I will try to make a reappearance. I'm going to say this one's done, so let's tint this down a little bit. How's that sound? There we go. Those ones are mostly done. Well, those ones are done. And we'll come back later and we'll, because I'm yawning, and you guys don't want to hear me yawn. You want to hear me teach. Sounds good, Sensei. Sensei. Whoa. When will the next stream be? It's a very good question. When do you want it to be? Because I'm nothing without viewers, and if I do it and there's nobody watching, it's kind of discouraging. How about, hang on, Monday works best for me. Awesome, Monday night it is. I'll try not to make it so late, unless that's easier for you. I'm in Atlantic Standard Time. I don't know what time zone. That's the word I'm looking for. I don't know what time zone you're in, but Monday, it's a date. Pero, you better be there or be square, okay? All right, guys, that's been one more live stream under our belts. Thank you so much for joining. And as we say every time, -8. Hang on. That's Pacific. Mash that tiny bell. I'm -4, and 4 more is either Mountain Time or... Oh, Pacific. Awesome. Okay. All right, guys. Once again, thank you so much for joining us, and you guys have a wonderful evening. And stay nerdy, guys. Thanks for joining me.